In the quiet before creation's judgments, there is a moment far older than memory, a meeting that most believers are never taught to imagine. It begins not with thunder or fire, but with a silence so heavy it feels like the atmosphere of heaven itself is holding its breath. You can sense movement, figures gathering, presences older than nations, powerful yet restless, as though they have been summoned to answer for something they thought would remain hidden for eternity. There is no music, no spectacle, only the weight of truth drawing near. And in that hush, a realization forms like a slow, rising echo. God is not descending to speak with men. He is standing among other beings who were once called gods, rulers of realms, custodians of nations, spirits set over the world. They are not his equals. They never were. But they were appointed, entrusted, placed as witnesses of his justice. And now, summoned to his court, they stand in the presence they had drifted from, fearing the verdict they know is coming. This is the scene behind Psalm 82, an ancient confrontation rarely spoken of, yet filled with a tension that shapes the entire story of our world. The council begins long before the psalm is written. To understand it, we have to return to the moment when humanity fractures and the earth is divided by spiritual influence. Scripture hints at this division quietly, through scattered verses, subtle phrases, and glimpses behind the veil. The world was not left without governance. It was assigned. Nations were allotted to spiritual beings who were meant to shepherd, protect, and guide. They were given authority but not sovereignty, responsibility but not ownership. Yet something shifted, something deep and devastating. These beings, once radiant with purpose, grew intoxicated by the worship of the nations beneath them. What was supposed to be stewardship became domination. What should have been service became control. And slowly, like shadows stretching across a valley, injustice spread. Psalm 82 opens in this tension. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. It is not poetic exaggeration. It is a divine summons. He calls the heavenly rulers to account because the earth groans under their failure. There is nothing theatrical here, only the raw ache of betrayal and divine disappointment. The Almighty speaks not as a distant king but as a father confronting wayward sons. How long will you judge unjustly? He asks, not thunderously, not with spectacle, but with the quiet, undeniable tone of a truth that cannot be avoided. These rulers were meant to defend the weak, lift the oppressed, uphold righteousness. Instead, they allowed darkness to spread where they were meant to bring light. The nations became captive to corruption, and heaven could not remain silent. Behind the psalm lies a deeper grief, the grief of a God who entrusted his creation to beings who lost sight of their calling. The rulers of the nations were not ignorant. They had witnessed his glory, experienced his closeness, felt the purity of his justice. Yet they walked away. This is the heartbreak woven into verse 6. I said, you are gods, but you will die like men. It is not a threat. It is the result of severed connection. Beings designed for eternity forfeited their place by choosing their own glory over his design. Immortals heading toward a mortal end is not dramatic imagery. It is the sorrow of divine order collapsing. But Psalm 82 is not only a confrontation. It is a revelation. It exposes what was happening behind the scenes while nations formed, kings rose, and cultures flourished. Every conflict on earth echoed a spiritual conflict above. When Israel faced hostile nations, they were not merely confronting armies. They were clashing with the spiritual authorities influencing those nations. When prophets cried out about injustice, they were speaking into a world shaped by spiritual neglect. When God promised to reclaim the nations through his Messiah, he wasn't simply offering salvation. He was reclaiming territory from the rulers who failed him. The dramatic weight of Psalm 82 becomes clearer when we connect it to Jesus' mission. In John 10, when Jesus quotes this psalm, he is not defending himself casually. He is declaring something breathtaking. The restoration of authority is happening through him. The kingdom that the spiritual rulers corrupted is being taken back. Their failure set the stage for his mission. Their injustice made his justice necessary. Their abandonment of the weak made his compassion unavoidable. Every miracle he performed was not only an act of love, but an act of reclamation. He was healing what they had broken. And yet, embedded in the psalm, there is more. Verse 8 holds the turning point. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. It is both prayer and prophecy. It points to the day when all authority, spiritual, earthly, cosmic, returns to the one who never misused it. It is the moment when nations are no longer influenced by beings who loved power more than righteousness. It is the day when God's rule is restored not through intimidation, but through his Son's sacrifice and resurrection. This is the quiet force behind the drama. The world is being brought back under the rule of the one who created it. The counsel of Psalm 82 is not about fear. It is about accountability. It reveals that even spiritual beings are not beyond judgment. It reminds us that God sees injustice long before humans notice it. It shows that even in the spiritual realm, authority is held to divine standards. And it assures us that no matter how deeply the world feels corrupted, there is a God who confronts the causes, not just the symptoms. The psalm ends abruptly, almost as if the final line snaps the tension like a thread pulled too tight. It leaves a ringing truth in the air. The earth will be judged, and the nations will be restored. The beings who once misled humanity will fall, and the one true God will rule without resistance. It is this ending that sets the emotional weight of the entire passage, not through spectacle, but through certainty. Creation will not remain fractured. Heaven will not remain silent. God will reclaim what is his. In the end, the story of Psalm 82 is not about divine anger. It is about divine order. It is about a God who refuses to abandon his creation, even when those he entrusted with authority walked away from him. It is a reminder that justice is not a concept, it is a person. And that person stands among the mighty, calling every power, seen or unseen, to answer for how they handled what he gave them. And as the psalm closes, it does not leave us in fear, but in expectation. The council has been addressed. The rulers have been warned. And humanity is left with the assurance that God himself will step into the brokenness, confront the corruption, and restore what was lost. Psalm 82 is not merely an ancient record. It is a declaration of what God does when authority fails. When nations tremble, when justice fades, he rises, he speaks, he restores.